Hello people of YouTube and welcome to the monthly review of December 2022. I'm currently making butteries on January 15th and I figured that since I hadn't recorded the sort of presentation bit for the monthly review yet, I might as well do it now. It's multitasking and all that. So firstly, what are butteries? Butteries, in a crude way of putting it, are Scottish croissants, which I'm sure people from Scotland would be in severe disagreement about. It is basically what it comes down to. It's a bread dough that you laminate with not just butter, like you would a croissant, but also lard. For the ones of you who don't know, lard is pig's fat. So you can imagine that this mess of dough is going to become very rich, very crispy, very delicious, as long as you're not vegan or vegetarian. And I do indeed understand that the idea is slightly off-putting, putting pig's fat inside a pastry, but it's genuinely so good. Anyway, on to the monthly review part of the monthly review of December, which started out with just a walk along Hylvannet. This walk around Hylvannet was basically just a Saturday or Sunday walk as any other, but soon after, a friend of Signe's called Hélène came over. Hélène and Signe wrote their master thesis together and have bonded over their love of dogs. And not only Hélène came up, but her tiny little dog, Ted, joined her into our apartment as well, which was super lovely. And naturally, that resulted in many more walks being taken. This walk was in fact so much the last one that it was done during Hélène's first rest stop on her drive down to the south of Norway where she lives. We drove down with her for 50, 60 kilometers thereabouts and had a walk around as the sun rose over the horizon, which is a rare occurrence in winter in Norway, and just had a wonderful walk around a lovely little area we hadn't explored before.
Getting the nice colors. Or what's in that? And Ted just like, you so slow.
Like you slow, let's just walk stand still.
Let's just run up this hill.
Oh,
yeah. The doggo persons. In their fucking jackets.
So you have Doritos though? You have Doritos? You have Doritos? I'm hungry. You have Doritos? I'm hungry. Do you have Doritos? How about you? Do you have Doritos? I'm hungry. You have Doritos?
I'm figuring out when I get to work next week. Shakes.
Okay, now I need to put my lard and butter mixture onto this here dough sheet. Viewer discretion is advised. While I'm thinking about very heavy food though, this kind of reminds me of Christmas dinner, which just coincidentally is what we're about to talk about next. For this year's Christmas dinner, we went down to the south of Norway and we had a fairly big Christmas gathering with a lovely traditional Christmas dinner. Which, for the Norwegians amongst you who are wondering, we had pinnekjøtt this year. For the non-Norwegians among you wondering now, pinnekjøtt is a lamb-based dish. It's lamb, I want to say ribs, but I'm not 100% sure. It's lamb that has been salted and dried for a very long time, which is then rinsed for a day, day and a half to get all of the salt back out. And then I think they boil it as well before putting it in the oven and doing the final touches on it. It's pretty good, even if you are, like me, not a big fan of lamb, because most of the sheepy flavor is kind of diluted by all of the processing and drying and aging that's happened to it. It kind of mellows out in a way, and with all of the side dishes and extra things around it, you don't even eat that much of the main pinnekjøtt thing. You also have sausages and meatballs and potatoes and vegetable, like root vegetable mash, and there's just so much on the table, and it's so hard not to overstuff yourself. We were in the south for, I think, a week, Wednesday to Wednesday. And on the second to last day, we went to see Avatar: The Way of Water. Now, I am not a film critic or film reviewer in any way, shape or form, but I do have some opinions on Avatar: The Way of Water. Just as I have some opinions on this dough, I made this way too wet by accident, and I assume that happened because I used a different flour than I normally would, and the type of flour that I have is a bit more whole grain than the flour you're supposed to use for this. It's a bit of a mess, which nicely leads me into my opinion on Avatar. It was a bit of a mess. Oh geez, oh geez, oh it's so sticky. Okay, well, let's call that lamination layer 1. Christ on a bike. So without giving any spoilers, Avatar: The Way of Water was absolutely beautiful. The production value was just astonishing, through the roof. And, you know, as has been hyped a lot around Avatar: The Way of Water, the water in it was fabulous. However, unfortunately, they poured all of this production value into a wafer thin plot. While watching it, it just felt very clear that it was... Jesus, that was aggressive. I don't feel that passionately about any of this. But while we were watching it, it felt very clear that there was so much more thought and passion poured into the world and into the production value and into just the way it felt than there was put into the story. The story did not justify all of the work that has gone into this film. It was fine, way too long, I might say. And we went to a cinema where there was no break. And if you are into films in the way I am, where you really appreciate good visuals, The Way of Water is definitely worth seeing, though maybe wait until it appears on some form of streaming service and don't go to the cinema for it. It might be quite nice during the 3.5 hours you have to sit for it that you can decide to pause whenever you like for a bathroom break. We did not have that luxury. And then came romjula, as they say in Norwegian, the space around Christmas, or really the space in between Christmas and New Year's. We flew back to Trondheim on the Wednesday between Christmas and New Year's, and Frank came up from the Netherlands on the same day. He stayed with us for an entire week, so he flew back the Wednesday after, which was very lovely. And we did very little, all things considered, especially if you compare it to his visit in August. But here are some of the things that we did do. On his first full day here, we were gonna go bouldering. Frank's been bouldering for, I wanna say about a year now, maybe slightly shorter. And I've been bouldering for only about 4 or 5 months at this point. But we wanted to go bouldering together because as far as exercise goes, it's a very chill way to work out and also get some social time together. So we went bouldering, but before bouldering, I promised I'd take Frank to a fried chicken place in town that is just called Fly Chicken. And at Fly Chicken, they have a sandwich called the Fly Mandy, which is one of my favorite chicken burgers I've ever had. And of course, I gave it to Frank to try this time around. The thing that makes it special, the thing that makes it vaguely related to what I'm making here right now, is that it's a fried chicken breast on a croissant, which is ridiculous, but delicious. And probably in line with any expectations. Frank seemed to quite enjoy his Fly Mandy as well. Then we went bouldering and I realized that I have indeed gotten quite a bit stronger and better in the last few months, which is always fun to know. Working out actually seems to be doing something for me this time, which is nice to know because I haven't ever really stuck with exercise for long enough and regularly enough that it really starts doing anything for me. But as I talked about in the Curiosity in Advance that I released last month, bouldering has been fun, it's been motivational to see my progress, and I'm probably gonna keep doing it for at least as long as we live here in Trondheim. While he was here, we also went hiking with Frank, although not nearly as much as we might normally go hiking when we have guests over, or in general really. And the largest reason for that is that the trails, roads too, but mostly the trails, are a slippery slide of death at the moment. They consist of nothing but snow that has been melted, and then the water of the melted snow has refrozen into just a layer of pure ice. It's incredibly precarious to walk up a hill. Signe is used to this because she grew up in Norway, so her winter commute to school was basically walking uphill in headwind both ways with slippery roads, and it was dangerous and dark all the time because it's Norway. I have been here for 7 years, so I'm slightly more used to it than the average Dutch person, but Frank, let's just say he had some trouble, particularly walking up certain hills. And fair enough, if you're not used to walking on any sort of slippery surface, it's a fucking nightmare. It's a nightmare when you are used to it. So yeah, don't blame him for not enjoying the walking portions of the hikes. The views, of course, fantastic. It's Norway, it's gorgeous. It's just tricky. Enjoying the snow?
Yeah, the snow, yeah. The snow is great. It's the ice I'm concerned about.
If we finish this walk without Frank breaking any bones, it will be a success.
Last roll of the day, and then I need to cut them into squares. While Frank was here, we also did a lot of baking and cooking good food. Whenever Frank is here, we have the slight tendency to, I don't want to say overeat, but eat well. We like to bake together and make rich meals together and kind of experiment from time to time. So this time around, because it's after Christmas, there was a discount on various Christmas things, including another Norwegian staple of Christmas food called ribbe, which is pig's ribs, which we decided would work well as something spare rib adjacent. So instead of doing the classic ribbe treatment, we marinated it in various spices and soy sauce and whiskey, I think, and made something slightly barbecue-y out of the whole, and it was utterly delicious. We also, on New Year's Eve, made a Dutch specialty called oliebollen, literally translated to oil balls. I know, delicious. They're basically a yeast-based donut. You make a very thin, very wet yeast dough, very simple, and then you just scoop lumps of dough out of the bowl straight into the deep fryer, making effectively an oily dough ball. And while that is, I agree, a slightly ridiculous food, they are so tasty, so rich, and we only, for sensible reasons, eat them once a year. They are, however, definitely a tradition from the Netherlands that I have kept around and alive while living in Norway. They are one of the few important things of Dutch traditions to me, mostly because they are just so good. We have eaten like kings for a week. How are we finishing off this Christmas break before we go back to work?
Eating even more food than we have a week. We are making lasagna, we are making focaccia, we are making cinnamon buns, and Tom is making homemade pasta to go in lasagna. So for a while there we had like 4 different things going in bowls and kneading. And it was chaos, but I loved it. And it will be very tasty.
Anyway, that's going to do it for the monthly review of December 2022. I am just putting the final butteries on baking paper and then they will go in the oven. And for all I know, they might turn out shite. I don't know yet. I will overlay some footage here so that you can judge for yourself. And yeah, with that, I am going to leave you there. Thank you ever so much for watching. Don't forget to push some of the positive buttons down below, and I'll see you in the monthly review of January 2023. Ciao.